Hello, I am Kyatric and today I'm making this video for the Construct 2 Academy. Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to dynamically change the colors of a sprite thanks to webGL effects. So I've created a project that displays a sprite with a little animation. You can notice that the sprite is made of specific colors for the background, the body, and the eyes. I've set out a list that allows us to select a specific part of the sprite that we are going to change the color of. And we do have slider bars on the left for the red, green and blue values of the color. And when we slide the bar, it dynamically modifies the color of the specified element. So let's modify the color of the eyes. And finally the body, which is white by default, and we can modify the color dynamically. Let's see now how to make this project in Construct. So as I've said, I've already done the project and it's quite simple. It contains a list object from the form controls, also the slider bar object, the text object, and finally a sprite. And I've also added the function object as well as an array to help out. So the sprite is composed of several frames and does an animation that is looping. And as we are using a webGL effect, I've added this effect. I've actually added 3 times the replace color effect that you can find in the color category. Replace color. So one is set up to replace the color of the body, one to replace the color of the eye, and one the color of the background. The images for the sprite I've took on opengameart.org, and you'll be able to find the URL directly into the event sheet. We'll come back to this later. So as you can notice, 3 replace color effects with each their own parameter. The replace color effect does take 7 parameters. The 3 first are the R for red, green and blue source color, so the values for the regular color we are going to replace. So the body is white. In RGB colors it's a value of 255 for all the 3 parameters. Then we do have the red, green and blue replace value. So by default, when I've set the replace color parameter, I'm using the very same values, but you'll see that we are going to modify this value to modify the color. And the tolerance, as you can see, from 0 to 100 is allowing you to spread and expand the range of the color you are replacing. Or if the color you are willing to replace in your sprite isn't exactly this value, but perhaps could be at some pixels, 251 for example, you would play on the tolerance to allow still those pixels to be replaced by this value. The slider bars, I've simply added an instance variable to their instances of the same object, slider bar, and I've added a color instance variable from 0, 1 to 2. That will allow us to remember that red is 0, green is 1, and blue is 2. And the list itself will contain the body elements. If we also go into the View ribbon, you can notice that we have checked Snap to Grid and Show Grid to display the grid and align the different instances of our objects to it. All the rest is done directly into the event sheet. So let's have a look at how the events sheet is set up. I've created global variables that I've made constant. As you can see, it's selected, which means that this value can't never be modified during the execution of the game or the project. The name is in capital letters. I've set a constant variable named red, and its value is 0. Green, its value is 1, and blue, its value is 2. So it's like we've set up for our slider bars. I've also added constant variables with the name of the body elements or the elements of the picture, the body, the eye, and the background. And finally, I do have a global variable named element selected. As I was saying previously, here is the URL for the sprite images textures. I've set there the different colors for the elements, and that's the basic colors. So by default, the eyes are of an RGB value of 119, 65, and 17. The background is 111, 109, and 81. On start of the layout, I do add the items to my list, body, eyes, background, which will allow me to have elements to pick from, to select from. I set default colors in the array, and that's where our global constant variables come in handy. First off, I select the item element selected from the list. By default, element selected is 0, and 0 is the index for the first item that was added. So by default, it's going to show, to display body, and to have the item body selected in my list. Then I'm modifying the size of the array to contain all the values, that is to say 3 values for 3 objects: the body, the eye, and the background. And then entering those values. So the red value for my body is going to be 255. The green value for my element body is going to be 255, etc. That's also the default values. I do the same, so body, eye, background, and then I'm calling the function setSlider, which is here. We'll run a loop that picks each slider bar object one after the other and set its value to the default value I've set down here, since I'm calling it right after having set the default value. But this function will also allow me to display the values of the slider bars whenever I'm selecting a new element from my list. And that's what it is doing when list on selection changed. I set element selected global variable value to the selected index. So it's either 0, 1, or 2. And I'm calling setSlider. And so it's going to display the current value, which is stored into the A colors array. And when I'm modifying for each slider bar, I'm modifying the value of the slider, which is there checked by the condition that the slider value is different from the value that is stored into the array. I'm then setting the value into the array according to the current value of the slider bar, and I'm calling the setColor function, which is the next function, and which simply, for each effect, so replace color body, then replace color eye, and replace color background, will pick the value into the array that is the correct value. So it is the red value for the body element, then the green value for the body element, and the blue value for the body element. Here I've done all my colors for the body, and then I'm changing the value, the red value for the eye, the green value for the eye, the blue value for the eye, and then the red value for the background, green value for the background, etc. You can notice that you are setting for an effect a parameter number. So the effect I'm choosing between the three available, the parameter index. So like for the arrays or for the slider bars, etc., each parameter has an index. So the red source value is the parameter 0. Then the green source value is parameter 1, parameter 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We do have 7 parameters in the end, but the maximum index is going to be 6 because the first index is 0. And so when I'm replacing parameter 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, I'm modifying the red replace value from 255 to the value that is going to be set into our array. And that's how it allows us to modify the slider bars and see directly the change affect the sprite. I can use this aspect to, for example, generate a random color. We are now adding a button object to our project that we are going to label generate random color. And so when we are going to click that button, so we add the event button on clicked. On button clicked, I press the B key, which allows me to create a blank sub-event that I can then collapse. It's mostly for organization. I could very well add my actions directly here. What I will want to do is to set the X and Y value. So the X is going to be red at first, and there it's the element, the body that is selected. So I will add directly my element selected variable. My element selected variable, and the value is going to be an integer. That's a system expression that is going to be randomized out of a range of 0 to 256. As I've said earlier, RGB values go from 0 to 255, but the random expression returns a number that is going to never reach the max limit. Also, as I'm setting my random into an int expression, it means that it's going to return only integers. So if I were to put 0 to 255, the maximum value I would have returned from this expression would be 254, which is one less than the actual range for the RGB values. So I'm setting one more, knowing that I'm never going to have a 256 value returned from this expression. We then hold down the control key again, drag drop the action, modify it for green, do it again, and modify it for blue. Then what we want is to set the slider and set the color accordingly. Previewing my project, I do have my button. It's on the body. I click and it generates a random color, and I've set the sliders accordingly. So we can generate a random color and we can set it for the different elements by selecting, and when we go back it keeps in memory the value. That's how you can dynamically use webGL effects to obtain and modify their values. Another simple way to do it, let's add yet another button. Let's call it gradual modification. Let's add a behavior to our sprite, which is going to be the signy behavior. Let's set it so it's not active and it's a value only. It's a sign over a period of 4 seconds, and it's going to have a magnitude of 255. And that's all we need for now. So let's modify, add an event when we click on the button 2. Let's actually add an instance variable to our cat. Gradual, a boolean, and it's false by default. When we will click on the button, it will set the value to true and will modify color automatically. Let's go back. So button 2 is clicked. Let's press the S key or right click and add a sub event, and we are checking for the boolean variable. Is it gradual? For now we know it's not, so we invert it. When the cat gradual boolean instance variable is not true, so it's false, we'll first modify the value so that it's true. We will also activate the signy behavior, set it to active. We'll also start the cycle position at 0, and that's it. So we are going to hold down the control key, drag drop our event, go into the condition, invert it so that when gradual is true, but if we keep it the way it is, we are going to click when it's not set to true, it will turn on to true and then check the next sub event, and so it's going to be true because we have set it right there. So we press the C condition to add a condition, system, and go into else. Modify the condition by holding it and drag dropping it on top. You see, right now it's else not valid. Now it is. And the else make it so that if the previous event has been executed, this current event won't. So we will want to set the gradual to false. We'll want to set the sign to inactive, and we don't care about the cycle position there. So this is going to allow me on my click to simply start or stop the color modification. Now I simply need to add an event. Cat is gradual, where I'm going to go back there and pick all the actions because they are going to be the very same. So I can press the B to make a blank sub-event again. And this time, instead of an integer and a random value, I'm going to pick directly the value, the magnitude value from my Sine behavior, or rather the value, that's the best, the value, and set it to red, to green, and to blue. It's going to set the slider accordingly, and it's going to set the color accordingly. Let's test out. So, no modification, the body is selected, gradual modification. You can notice that it's modifying all the values at once. And so that's according to the Sine behavior value. So that's another way for us to modify then dynamically some parameters of our effects thanks to a behavior that is applied to our project, and to start and stop it on a regular basis. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Don't hesitate to check out some of the other Construct2 Academy material. Thank you for watching.